Welcome to SVG-TV News and Sports for Thursday, January 23rd, 2014. I am Jennifer Richardson with the details. $10 million EC is estimated for repair works to 3 of the St. Vincent Electricity Services Limited VINLEC hydro plants following the December 24th floods. At a media conference yesterday, VINLEC CEO Tony Myers outlined that 3 of the company's plants received significant damage, with Cumberland and Richmond receiving the brunt.
Events similar or close to that which occurred on the 24th. The installation of what is called spur dikes and diversion routes for some of our rivers, working the river channels to essentially put them back in a manner that they perhaps be more, the river will perhaps be more akin to flowing, but certainly we estimate that to be another $4 to $5 million that has to be spent and should be spent, because if we don't do it, essentially we put in our infrastructure at risk for being suffering the same fate that occurred.
Myers said very few persons will know of the damage which the company sustained during the floods, because all electricity supplies were restored by the 27th of December.
Perhaps there's no reason for us to go up into the upper watershed catchment areas to see this damage, but I know over the last month or so a number of intentions has been essentially sightseeing to get to see what has happened in these areas. I also should have mentioned that at Richmond, while I said the power plant at Richmond itself did not suffer any main damage, we had water coming in at the Richmond, because the Richmond, I will call it perhaps comparatively speaking, it's a gutter just at our Richmond power plant, and that there was significant erosion of our property as the water level rose, and some of that water got into the power plant, clearly created more mess than damage. So essentially we didn't have damage there, but we have damage to the fencing and the retaining walls and gabion basket that we have protecting our property.
Meantime, Myers said with the 3 hydro plants out of commission, the company expects the fuel surcharge to be higher than normal in months to come, and that this will result in Vincentians spend more on their bills.
If you take, for example, the month that just passed, these plants became unavailable on the 24th of December. So we did not have them for approximately 7 days. And the fuel surcharge, although all not attributed to the absence of the hydroelectricity, but our fuel surcharge moved by approximately 7 cents from what it was the previous month. So we moved from about 48 cents to just over 55 cents. This is not to say, I don't want anyone to make a calculation and say, well, this means that the fuel surcharge, if it's 7 cents in 1 week, then it's going to be 28 cents. No. I'm just giving an example because there are other factors that come together. Of course, the cost of fuel. And it happened that in December, the cost of fuel, the average cost of fuel was a little more than it was in November.
And with the electricity surcharge rate expected to increase in the months to come, Myers is further encouraging Vincentians to conserve electricity.
Please don't tell the children not to turn off the electricity when they want to study. Let them do what they have to do. And that is important. Sometimes in the process of us seeking to conserve electricity, we sometimes go to the limit. The kids have to do their homework, let them do their homework. And what we're talking about here is wastage. For those customers who will be receiving new electrodomestic appliances, and for those who will be going out and buying, this is perhaps an opportunity to perhaps get the most efficient appliance that is on the market. And I'm sure that the government is going to look at this closely. It is not just a replacement of a fridge, but in the process of replacing a refrigerator or a deep freeze, one should seek to get what is the most energy efficient ones available.
The New Democratic Party, the NDP, is said to be trying to make political capital out of people's bereavement. So says Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves in responding to statements made by the opposition on radio days after the December 24th disaster, which Dr. Gonsalves says were completely unbecoming. The Prime Minister told Parliament that the opposition went on radio without permission of families who lost loved ones and told the public that the government will not pay for the burials of the deceased as it promised. Such action, PM Gonsalves says, must not be condoned.
So we want people to call in to make pledges. You know, they did that. When I heard that, I said, what is the manner of these people? I said, these people have lost the plot. People are suffering, and you're hearing their names on top of the radio to supply monies. They never ask you.
Government is expected to comment soon the distribution of fridges and stoves to persons who lost these appliances in the December 2013 floods. At a handing over ceremony yesterday at Cabinet Room, PM Gonsalves said that in order for those affected to begin putting their lives back together, it's important for them to be given these appliances in addition to other assistance.
Julian Francis tells me, Minister Francis tells me that sometime this week we should commence the distribution of fridges and stoves, because if we begin the distribution of the fridges and stoves, it means that people can cook for themselves and people can store their food. So they're back on track. Of course, we have to still try to see if we could get, and I'm trying to see if I could get some furniture. I've made contact with an entity, and Julian himself had made contact with somebody to see if we can get cooking utensils.
Dr. Gonsalves added that approximately $2.4 million is required to assist families in shelters and other affected persons in several communities across the country. However, he stressed that with the distribution of the appliances, that figure will reduce automatically.
Persons who need fridges and stoves, who got their fridges and stoves damaged, and we get those back in, the less obviously we will have to spend on the shelters and also on providing food for people in communities, so that the estimate of $2.4 million could become less, in fact, or more, depending on the way, the pace at which those are addressed.
And opposition leader Anim Eustace says, contrary to public discourse, the government will not lose revenue if it gives free concessions on items such as fridges and stoves, which some persons lost in the Christmas Eve disaster.
Government was not expecting that all those items will come in 2014. So they were not even in government projections or revenue, was approved even before the storm. So those new imports were not projected in your revenue for 2014. So how are you going to lose it? You never had it, and you would never have had it if you didn't have the storm.
Eustace further pointed out that in order for the duty-free concessions to work effectively, a credible list of persons affected by the disaster must be established.
I have recommended that in relation particularly to things like fridges and stoves and so on, that the government meet with the importers of those items and make some arrangements for concessions so that we can bring down the price of these things drastically, both in terms of VAT and in terms of import duty. And where, once you identify people, and you have a list of identified people who have been affected, if their family in the diaspora wants to send items like that, they should be sent in with the same concession.
Another institution has pledged its support to the SVG Disaster Relief Effort Program by donating monies in excess of $10,000. The contribution, which was made to NEMO, was donated by the All Saints University College of Medicine. Professor at the university, Terence Marcel, said they sympathize with those impacted by the devastating floods on Christmas Eve and that donation is the university's way of giving back to the government for allowing them to operate here.
The government and the people of St. Vincent opened their hearts and their doors to welcome us to this country. We thank you, and we continue to acknowledge your support by giving back in our most humble way through our community service activities such as the health fairs and the health education clinics at various schools. It is our honor to make a contribution to the flood relief efforts.
In expressing his gratitude for the donation, Director of NEMA Howie Prince says in times of disasters, everyone has to be their brother's keepers.
We heartily accept your contribution to the relief effort, and we can guarantee you that your contribution will go to the persons who are affected. The system that is in place does not allow for anything other than fairly equitable distribution of aid to affected families and affected persons. You have the right as a contributor to our effort to come somewhere down the road and request of us accountability.
Still to come, we hear government exploring options to reform the public service pension system. More stories on the local scene when SVG-TV News continues. Don't go away. Welcome back. The government is said to be exploring various options for the reform of the current public service pension system. Delivering his 13th consecutive budget address on Monday, January 20th, Prime Minister Dr. Rav Gonsalves said public service pension observed a considerable amount of the public resources, 11.3% of revenue in 2013, which he says will increase in the coming years if adjustments are not made.
Government employees are eligible for both NIS and government pension. Workers who retire with the maximum allowed years of service would be entitled to a pension with a replacement rate of up to 127% of their salaries. There is no reasonable justification for workers to retire with combined pensions in excess of their wages prior to retirement, especially that these benefits are based partly on a non-contributory plan financed by the taxpayers. I don't think anybody will quarrel with this to say, how can you have somebody when they retire, they'll get more money from both the NIS and from the state pension higher than their salary? That's not sustainable.
Prime Minister Gonsalves said they will be holding discussions with all stakeholders on pension reform in the coming months.
One of the reform measures we have started, one of the reform measures being considered is the increase in the retirement age for public servants in order to ensure that the retirement age is aligned with that of the NIS. Careful consideration will have to be placed on the transitional arrangement for such a measure so that the existing officers are not placed at a disadvantage.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Gonsalves said it is important that persons understand that the only alternative to reform is future insolvency and disorderly adjustments.
At the same time, reforms must be structured in a way that respects the legitimate expectations of current participants. The major reform measures which are being implemented include an increase in the contribution rate from the current level of 8% to 10% with effect from January 1st, 2014. A gradual increase in the number of years required for pension eligibility from 500 weeks to 750 weeks. A gradual increase in the retirement age to 65 years starting in 2016. A change in the rate of pension entitlement for each year of service, and a change in the reference wage used to calculate the pensions. At the same time, pensions in paid, the maternity grant, the funeral grant, the NAP funeral grant, and the employment injury grant have all been increased with effect from January this year.
Opposition leader Anim Eustace has lashed out at the public service for not speaking out against what he says is the government's 3-year salary freeze. Speaking at a press conference yesterday, the opposition leader pointed out that while Prime Minister Dr. Rav Gonsalves has accused the New Democratic Party of austerity, the NDP is not guilty of the sort. Eustace said had it been the NDP withholding increases on the wages of public servants, there would have already been a public outcry.
If we had done that, you will hear Gonsalves talking about that every day. And this public service has said nothing about it. Years ago, when I said we can't pay more than 12%, there was a big hue and cry, demonstration and all sorts of things. We've had 3 years, including this year here, when the civil service will get no salary increase whatsoever. And not a word.
The use of information technology to harm or harass other people in a deliberate, repeated and hostile manner has become a growing concern worldwide. In this regard, a cyberbullying awareness activity dubbed Say No with TechGo was recently organized by the Ministry of Education. Several 3rd and 4th form students of Information Technology IT and Electronic Document Preparation Management EDPM engaged in creating electronic documents, namely flyers and bookmarks for the campaign. At a presentation ceremony, Education Officer for IT Shanyat Ramsamouj highlighted the purpose of the activity.
There can be serious impacts from being engaged in cyberbullying activities. Thus, the reason for this competition in our schools, because we're thinking of how to keep you safe while you are on the internet, and also for you to come up with these documents so that we can educate our communities on cyberbullying.
Meanwhile, Howard Campbell, representing Macmillan Education, emphasized the company's main focus and spoke about its involvement in the cyberbullying activity.
Company, Macmillan Education, actually pushes the frontier of learning and discovery by providing the best content and most innovative content for students, teachers, and researchers. These groups of persons are at the center of all that we do, and we share their passions for transforming lives across the world. So our involvement in this, the first staging of the cyberbullying awareness competition, it's an indication of our support of the formal education process, but more so for that of community-based social transformation.
Artemis Childs of Dr. J.P. Eustace Memorial Secondary School was awarded first place for his work and will receive a 16-gig Apple iPad, compliments Macmillan Education. Kilano O'Neill and Elroy Jr. Samuel took the 2nd and 3rd positions respectively and will receive Samsung cell phones. The $1.5 million Support for Education and Training program, which has been initiated by the government for the youth, will benefit those who get into the program. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves says the initiative is a good one and the opposition is yet to comment on the program, which he says is a higher level of the Youth Empowerment Service, the YES program, for students who graduate from the community college with 2 A-levels and communication studies, or with an associate degree, or persons who have completed their studies in nursing.
People who don't get a job yet, and university graduates, 50 for university graduates and 30 from the A-levels, from the community college. They'll be paid $1,000 for those who graduated from the community college system for a year, and the university will be $2,300. And if I get my hand on some more money, I'll increase the numbers. But this is to put people in a position to find their feet. Some may say they want to go and study here, they want to go off and do something else, they maybe go on to go in the private sector. Give them a chance. Give our young people a chance. You notice how we are always looking, Mr. Speaker, for opportunities, creative ways.